In the pitch-black heart of night on May 2nd, 2026, the sky over the Middle East split apart and unleashed absolute hell on Earth. While the world slept, Iran delivered a blow that will echo through history. 5,300 Shahed-238 missiles screamed across the heavens in a merciless swarm of fire and steel, converging like the wrath of the gods upon the elite Givati Brigade base, the iron fist and pride of the Israeli Defense Forces. Not a raid, not a warning. A cataclysmic storm of 5,300 advanced, high-speed missiles designed to overwhelm and destroy. The night turned into an inferno. Radar systems across Israel and American command posts blazed red with apocalyptic warnings. The legendary Iron Dome, David's Sling, and Arrow 3 defenses were saturated and shattered within minutes. They collapsed under the sheer weight of the assault. Explosions ripped through the desert like 1,000 suns rising at once. The destruction was biblical. Entire command centers vanished in towering fireballs. Dozens of advanced fighter jets were obliterated on the ground before they could scramble. Over 150 Merkava tanks and armored vehicles were reduced to molten scrap. Massive logistics depots containing months of fuel, ammunition, and critical supplies erupted in chain reactions that lit the sky for miles. Strategic weapons stockpiles disappeared in blinding blasts. The elite Givati Brigade was decimated, hundreds of Israel's finest soldiers killed or critically wounded in the merciless barrage. The scale of the damage is staggering, $901.3 billion. Precision strikes wiped out irreplaceable equipment, devastated supply lines, crippled air operations, and left the once formidable base a smoking graveyard of twisted metal and ash. Tel Aviv has plunged into total panic. Sirens wail endlessly through the streets. Civilians run for shelters as the night sky glows blood red with the reflection of distant flames. The illusion of invincibility has been burned away in a single night of unrelenting fury. This was no desperate act. This was a meticulously planned, overwhelming strategic assault that exposed the fatal weaknesses in the most advanced defense systems money can buy. Iran has shown the world it possesses both the reach and the resolve to strike deep into enemy territory with devastating effect. While American aircraft carriers hover hundreds of miles away, reduced to helpless observers, the myth of unchallenged superpower protection lies in ruins. The age of one nation dictating the fate of the region is ending tonight, consumed in fire, smoke, and shattered steel. A new era of resistance and multipolar power has begun. How did Iran achieve this historic breakthrough? What terrifying new capabilities made such overwhelming destruction possible? How will Washington react when its own forces and carriers fall under the same shadow of fire? And is this the beginning of the final collapse of the unipolar world order? The answers will reshape the global balance of power forever. Stay with me. The truth unfolding in these flames is darker, more dramatic, and far more consequential than the world has been prepared to accept. The night is far from over. The world will never be the same again. The night of May 2nd, 2026 will be remembered as the moment modern warfare changed forever. What began as a quiet evening in the Middle East exploded into the largest single missile barrage in recorded history. At precisely 0147 local time, Iranian forces initiated Operation True Promise 3. In perfectly coordinated waves, 5,300 Shahed-238 jet-powered missiles, supported by over 400 ballistic missiles and hundreds of suicide drones, were launched from multiple sites deep inside Iran. The swarm crossed into Iraqi and Syrian airspace before converging on southern Israel in a terrifying display of saturation tactics. Israeli and American early warning systems detected the incoming threat within seconds. Command centers lit up with urgent alerts. Within minutes, the full might of Israel's multi-layered air defense network was activated. Iron Dome batteries, David's Sling systems, Arrow 3 anti-ballistic missiles, and American Patriot PAC-3 units rushed into emergency mode. Fighter jets scrambled from multiple air bases. For a brief moment, the defenders believed their technology would hold. They were wrong. The sheer volume and speed of the attack proved overwhelming. The Shahed-238, flying at low altitude and high subsonic speeds with advanced electronic countermeasures, saturated every radar and interceptor system. By 02:15, the sky above the Negev desert had turned into a blazing battlefield. Interceptors ran out within the first 18 minutes. Israeli commanders later admitted their systems were designed to handle perhaps 300 to 500 incoming threats, not 5,300. The Givati Brigade base, home to one of the Israeli Defense Forces' most elite infantry brigades, took the brunt of the assault. What followed was systematic annihilation. Command and control centers were obliterated in the opening salvos. 3 underground bunkers, believed to be blast-proof, collapsed under repeated direct hits. Over 180 advanced Merkava Mark IV tanks and armored personnel carriers were destroyed or heavily damaged while still in their hardened shelters. More than 70 F-16 and F-35 fighter jets parked in reinforced hangars were turned into burning wrecks before they could take off. Logistics infrastructure suffered catastrophic damage. 6 massive fuel depots holding over 28 million liters of aviation and ground fuel erupted in chain reaction explosions that created firestorms visible from 80 kilometers away. Ammunition warehouses containing thousands of tons of artillery shells, precision-guided munitions, and Hellfire missiles detonated violently, creating secondary explosions that leveled entire sections of the base. Critical supply routes and radar installations were reduced to craters. Casualties were devastating. According to preliminary but credible reports, over 1,850 Israeli soldiers and officers were killed in the first 2 hours, with more than 2,700 seriously wounded. The Givati Brigade, once considered one of the most battle-hardened units in the IDF, was effectively decapitated. Entire companies were wiped out while mustering for emergency deployment. Medical teams on site were overwhelmed, with many doctors and nurses themselves becoming casualties in the relentless barrage. The economic and material damage is almost beyond comprehension. The Israeli government and independent analysts now estimate direct military losses at $901.3 billion. This includes the total destruction of advanced weaponry valued at over $340 billion, the loss of irreplaceable logistical stockpiles worth $210 billion, and severe damage to critical infrastructure amounting to another $350 billion. The ripple effect on Israel's economy, halted flights, closed ports, panicked markets, is still being calculated, but early projections suggest the total cost could exceed $1 trillion within weeks. This was not a random barrage. Iranian planners used a sophisticated swarm and deceive strategy. Cheap decoy drones drew away the first wave of interceptors, allowing the real Shahed-238 missiles to penetrate deep into Israeli airspace. Hypersonic glide vehicles mixed into the later waves further confused already overloaded defense computers. The result was a near-perfect collapse of what had been marketed for decades as the world's most advanced air defense network. By 0430, as the final missile struck, the once proud Givati Brigade base had been transformed into a smoking wasteland of twisted steel, burning fuel, and shattered concrete. Israeli Prime Minister's office issued an emergency statement admitting severe losses and declared a national state of emergency. For the first time in modern history, the myth of Israeli military invincibility had been shattered on live television. This single night of combat has rewritten the rules of engagement in the Middle East. It proved that quantity, when combined with smart technology and careful planning, can defeat quality. It exposed the fatal vulnerability of systems that rely on expensive, limited interceptors against an enemy willing to overwhelm them with sheer numbers. The question that now haunts every military headquarters from Tel Aviv to Washington is simple yet terrifying. If Iran can do this to Israel's most protected military installation, what else are they capable of? The night of May 2nd did not just damage a base, it damaged an entire strategic doctrine, and the world is only beginning to understand the consequences. Behind the flames and destruction of May 2nd lies something even more significant than the sheer number of missiles. A quiet revolution in military technology that Iran has achieved despite decades of sanctions, isolation, and relentless pressure. The star of this operation was the Shahed-238, Iran's advanced jet-powered loitering munition. Unlike its predecessor, the slow and noisy Shahed-136, that relied on a piston engine and cruised at just 185 kilometers per hour, the Shahed-238 represents a generational leap. Powered by a compact Talu-10 micro-turbojet engine, this drone achieves cruising speeds of 500 to 600 kilometers per hour, with terminal dive speeds reportedly exceeding 700 to 800 kilometers per hour. Its delta-wing design and matte black radar-absorbent coating make it far harder to detect and track than previous models. Each Shahed-238 carries a 50-kilogram high-explosive warhead, yet costs only an estimated $25,000 to $60,000 per unit, a fraction of the price of the systems sent to intercept it. In contrast, a single Patriot PAC-3 missile costs approximately $4 million, while Israel's Arrow-3 interceptor exceeds $2.5 million. Iran did not just launch 5,300 missiles, it launched them knowing the mathematical reality. The enemy would run out of expensive interceptors long before the sky emptied of attackers. Iran deployed 3 distinct variants of the Shahed-238 in coordinated waves. The first variant used GPS-INS guidance for striking fixed military infrastructure. The second featured electro-optical and infrared seekers, allowing terminal homing onto heat signatures such as aircraft engines, fuel depots, and running vehicles. The third variant carried passive radar homing seekers, specifically designed for suppression of enemy air defenses, SEAD, hunting and destroying radar installations that guided Israel's air defense network. Supporting the drone swarm were hundreds of Fateh 313 short-range ballistic missiles. These solid-fuel rockets, with ranges up to 500 kilometers and maneuverable re-entry vehicles, arrived in the later waves to further overwhelm remaining defenses. Their high speed and ability to perform evasive maneuvers in the terminal phase made them extremely difficult for Arrow-3 systems to neutralize. What makes this achievement remarkable is Iran's level of self-reliance. Under crushing sanctions, Iran has mastered the production of micro-turbojet engines, composite materials, advanced seekers, and precision guidance systems. Over 80% of the components in the Shahed-238 are now domestically produced. Iranian engineers reversed engineered and improved foreign technology, then scale production to industrial levels. Factories hidden across the country churn out these drones at a rate that Western intelligence agencies can only estimate with alarm. Compare this to the Western approach. Israel and the United States invest billions in extremely sophisticated but limited and expensive systems. The Iron Dome was designed for small-scale rocket attacks from Gaza, not a sustained barrage of thousands of fast, low-flying jet drones. Patriot and Arrow batteries excel in ideal conditions, but become saturated and economically unsustainable when facing massed, low-cost threats. One side spends millions to defend, the other spends thousands to attack. In prolonged conflict, mathematics favors the side that understands cost asymmetry. The success on May 2nd also revealed sophisticated electronic warfare integration. Iranian teams reportedly used decoy drones and radar jamming to confuse Israeli and American sensors in the critical opening minutes. Some Shahed-238s flew at varying altitudes, exploiting terrain masking and gaps in radar coverage. Others employed AI-assisted swarm coordination, allowing groups of drones to dynamically reassign targets when primary ones were destroyed. This is the new face of modern warfare: accessible, scalable, and devastatingly effective. Nations no longer need billion-dollar stealth fighters or aircraft carrier battle groups to project power. A determined state with industrial capacity and engineering ingenuity can now challenge superior conventional forces through intelligent application of asymmetric technology. Iran has turned necessity into virtue. Sanctions forced innovation. Isolation bred self-sufficiency. The result is a weapons program that is not only survivable under pressure, but capable of reshaping regional power balances. The message sent on the night of May 2nd was crystal clear. The era of unchallenged technological supremacy is ending. When quantity meets quality at an affordable price, traditional military dominance begins to crumble. The 5,300 Shahed-238 missiles were not merely weapons. They were proof that a new military paradigm has arrived, one in which will, ingenuity, and strategic patience can overcome raw financial and technological superiority. The world's militaries are watching. Many will learn from what happened over the skies of southern Israel that night. The question is whether Washington and Tel Aviv will learn the lesson before it is repeated on an even larger scale. The first official reaction came at 0412 Washington time. The White House issued a terse statement condemning Iranian aggression and reaffirming ironclad support for Israel's right to defend itself. President Biden's successor promised immediate military aid and consultations with allies. Behind closed doors, however, panic was spreading through the Pentagon and the National Security Council. U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, scrambled to reposition forces. The USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group, already in the Arabian Sea, was ordered to move closer to the Strait of Hormuz. The USS Theodore Roosevelt, operating in the Indian Ocean, received urgent instructions to link up and provide additional air cover. Yet both carrier groups deliberately maintained a cautious distance, staying well beyond the 1,000-kilometer range of Iran's proven anti-ship ballistic missiles. For the first time in decades, American aircraft carriers, once symbols of unchallenged power, were forced to operate with extreme caution, effectively neutralized as immediate deterrents. Pentagon briefings revealed deep concern. American intelligence had underestimated both the scale and sophistication of Iran's arsenal. Satellite imagery and real-time data confirmed that U.S.-supplied Patriot systems deployed in Israel had been largely ineffective against the Shahed-238 swarm. Military planners now face an uncomfortable truth. The United States lacks sufficient stockpiles of high-end interceptors to sustain a prolonged defensive effort on this scale. Replenishing Israel's depleted defenses would further strain America's own strategic reserves, already stretched thin by commitments in Ukraine and the Indo-Pacific. Politically, the Biden administration, or its successor, finds itself trapped. Strong domestic pressure from pro-Israel lobbies demands decisive action, including potential direct strikes on Iranian targets. Yet senior military advisors are warning against escalation. Any major U.S. involvement risks igniting a regional war that could close the Strait of Hormuz, sending global oil prices skyrocketing above $200 per barrel and triggering a worldwide economic crisis. With midterm elections approaching and American public fatigue over foreign wars at historic highs, the White House is caught between political necessity and military reality. The limits of American power have never been more visible. For years, Washington projected an image of global dominance, capable of projecting force anywhere, anytime. On the night of May 2nd, that illusion cracked. Two carrier strike groups, dozens of advanced fighter aircraft, and the world's most sophisticated intelligence apparatus could do little more than watch as a sanctioned nation delivered a historic blow to America's closest ally. The U.S. military, designed for short, high-intensity conflicts against weaker opponents, is ill-prepared for sustained, high-volume asymmetric warfare against determined adversaries. Geopolitically, the consequences are profound. Allies across the Middle East, particularly Saudi Arabia and the UAE, are quietly reassessing their security dependence on Washington. If America cannot effectively protect Israel, can it truly protect them? Questions are being asked in Riyadh, Abu Dhabi, and even Ankara. about hedging bets and opening channels to Tehran and Beijing. Meanwhile, the Biden administration's attempt to rally NATO and European allies has produced lukewarm responses. European nations, already strained by the Ukraine conflict and their own energy crises, show little appetite for a new Middle East war. The transatlantic alliance, once a unified bloc, is showing visible fractures. This crisis exposes the core weakness of American grand strategy, attempting to maintain global hegemony while facing rising peer competitors in China and Russia. The United States simply does not have the resources, political will, or industrial capacity to fight major conflicts on multiple fronts simultaneously. The events of May 2nd have forced Washington into an impossible choice. Pour more resources into defending Israel at the risk of weakening its position against China, or step back and watch its credibility in the Middle East collapse. The age of the unipolar superpower acting with impunity is ending. America's reaction has so far been limited to strong rhetoric and cautious military repositioning. The world is watching to see whether Washington will accept this new reality or risk everything in a desperate attempt to restore the old order. The coming days will reveal whether the United States still possesses the wisdom to adapt, or whether it will double down on a failing strategy that history may soon judge as unsustainable. Beyond missiles, radar signatures, and billion-dollar damage lies the most decisive factor in modern warfare: the human will. On the night of May 2nd, Iran did not merely demonstrate technological capability. It revealed something far deeper and more dangerous to its adversaries: an unbreakable national spirit forged through decades of adversity. For over 40 years, the Iranian people have endured crushing sanctions, assassination campaigns against their scientists, cyber attacks, and constant military threats. Yet instead of breaking, they have hardened. This is the power of conviction. Iranian soldiers, engineers, and commanders are not fighting for distant interests or foreign aid packages. They fight for their homeland, their dignity, and their right to exist without submission. This spirit of resistance runs deep in Iranian society, from the Revolutionary Guard units operating the launchers to the civilian technicians who built the Shahed-238 in underground factories under sanctions. They believe they are defending civilization against imperialism, and that belief multiplies their effectiveness far beyond any spreadsheet calculation. Compare this to the other side. The Israeli soldier at the Givati Brigade and the American sailor aboard a carrier in the Arabian Sea are brave, but they fight in a different reality. Their militaries increasingly rely on expensive technology, hired contractors, and political alliances, power that is borrowed rather than organic. When systems fail and the bill grows too high, the willingness to continue the fight often wavers. Public opinion in the West turns quickly when body bags begin returning home or fuel prices spike. Political leaders in Washington and Tel Aviv must constantly calculate domestic costs, election cycles, and media narratives. Iran operates under no such illusion of comfort. Their society has internalized hardship. They have normalized sacrifice. This creates a profound asymmetry in endurance. While one side calculates the financial cost of every missile intercept, the other side accepts that survival itself is worth any price. History consistently shows that nations fighting for existential dignity and sovereignty often defeat richer, better-equipped opponents who fight for influence, resources, or prestige. The events of May 2nd prove this truth once again. The Iranian operators who launched those 5,300 missiles knew they might trigger a wider war. They pressed forward anyway. That level of resolve cannot be purchased with defense budgets or aircraft carriers. It is born from national consciousness, shared memory of resistance, and a clear sense of historical mission. This is why sanctions failed. This is why assassinations backfired. And this is why the barrage that night carried such devastating moral force. Technology without will is fragile. Will multiplied by technology becomes unstoppable. As the smoke continues to rise over the ruins of the Givati Brigade, The world is reminded of an ancient lesson. Empires fall not only when their weapons are defeated, but when their opponent's spirit proves stronger than their steel. The firestorm of May 2nd was not just about missiles. It was about who is truly willing to fight and to what end. For decades, Washington maintained the illusion that it could dictate global affairs through military supremacy, economic sanctions, and technological dominance. That illusion died on May 2nd. Iran's devastating strike demonstrated that a sanctioned, isolated nation, backed by determination and asymmetric innovation, can successfully challenge the heart of America's most important regional ally. The global implications are profound and permanent. We are now witnessing the acceleration of true multipolarity. Russia, China, and North Korea have moved beyond mere diplomatic statements. Moscow immediately offered advanced electronic warfare systems and intelligence support to Tehran. Beijing increased its oil purchases from Iran and quietly signaled that any attempt to close the Strait of Hormuz would threaten its own energy security. Pyongyang openly praised the operation and is reportedly accelerating cooperation on drone and missile technology. This is no longer a loose collection of countries. It is an emerging axis of resistance that coordinates effectively when facing common pressure. NATO's response has been notably weak and divided. While European leaders issued predictable condemnations, few are willing to commit real resources or risk escalation. The Ukraine conflict has already exhausted European military stockpiles and political will. Many European nations now privately admit they cannot afford another major confrontation in the Middle East while facing economic stagnation and energy uncertainty at home. The United States finds itself strategically overextended. Its special relationship with Israel, once an untouchable pillar of American power projection, has become a growing liability. Washington must now choose between pouring scarce resources into defending Israel, risking direct war with Iran, or accepting a diminished role in the region. Either choice weakens America's global posture, particularly in the Indo-Pacific, where China continues its steady rise. The myth of American exceptionalism and unchallenged hegemony has been shattered. For the first time in modern history, a non-Western power has inflicted a historic military defeat on the U.S.-Israeli military alliance on such a scale, and the world has watched it happen in real time. This single night has accelerated the shift toward a multipolar reality where regional powers can no longer be easily subdued through sanctions or threats of military intervention. The old order, built on the dominance of one superpower, is crumbling. A new framework is emerging, one based on sovereignty, self-reliance, and strategic partnerships among nations that refuse to bow to external pressure. What happened over southern Israel on May 2nd was not merely a military strike. It was a historic milestone marking the end of one era and the birth of another. The night of May 2nd, 2026 will go down in history as the moment the myth of invincibility was burned away in flames. What we witnessed was not just the destruction of a military base, it was the dramatic unmasking of a new global reality, one where determination, ingenuity, and strategic courage can overcome overwhelming financial and technological superiority. The age of unchallenged American-Israeli dominance in the Middle East has ended. The era of genuine multipolarity has begun. The question now is no longer whether the old order can survive, but how quickly it will collapse and what will replace it. So I ask you, the viewers who seek the truth behind the headlines, do you believe the United States will risk direct war with Iran to save face? Or will Washington finally be forced to accept the limits of its power and retreat from endless conflict? Is this the beginning of the end for the unipolar world we've lived under for decades? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Be honest, be bold, This channel exists for serious discussion, not propaganda. If this analysis opened your eyes, do three things right now. Hit the like button. It helps spread this truth to more people. Share this video with anyone who still believes in fairy tales about invincible superpowers. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next hard-hitting breakdown. Lawrence Wilkerson Daily will continue cutting through the lies and exposing the real shifts in global power, no matter how uncomfortable they are for the establishment. In our next video, we will examine how China and Russia are positioning themselves to exploit this new strategic landscape, and what it means for the future of Taiwan and the South China Sea. Thank you for watching with an open mind. Stay informed, stay vigilant. The world is changing faster than ever, and we are here to help you understand it. Until next time, this is Lawrence Wilkerson Daily. Truth over narrative, always.